Just got this sweet medal from doing Indian Well 70.3 2 days ago. I think it's a great end of the year race. Good temperatures for racing, typically low 50s in the morning to 70s-ish in the afternoon. You've got a beach start, you've got a super flat bike course, and then you've got a fairly challenging run. So if you're thinking about doing it, I have got the ins and outs for you coming up. Hey, it's Coach Eric bringing you another weekly free video based on triathlon mistakes I have made. And this week we are talking about Indian Well 70.3. I just got myself a cup of coffee, even though it was 2 days ago. I'm still trying to warm up. Great race, but freezing cold in the morning, especially the water. We'll get back to that cold water in a second. First, hit the subscribe button so you don't miss another video. And let's go to the day before the race, because this race has two different transition areas, which isn't all too uncommon, but there's some specific order of things that you're going to want to do so you don't waste any time. So the first thing you want to do is you drive to the tennis gardens, which is the finish in transition 2. And make sure that when you go there to check in, that you also bring everything that you need for the run. So everything that you would put in your transition 2, your T2 red bag that they give you, make sure you've got all your stuff for that, because after you check in and get your bag and numbers, you're going to put all that stuff in there and you are going to leave that red bag in transition. And then what I would recommend doing is see where the bike comes into that transition area, and from that frame of reference, take a picture or a short video so that you'll know where to go the next day in the race when the bike leg is over with, because you're not going to come back to this area after this point. So make note of where you're at so you're not wasting precious time on race day looking for your transition spot. Once you do that, you say goodbye to your run gear and hop back in the car and head to the swim start in transition 1 at the Lake Coahuila. And again, this takes planning, so you're going to want to have your bike ready to go and your wetsuit or anything neoprene, a thermal cap or booties. And then when you get there, there's a certain order of things that they make you do. And so if it's the same next time the race happens, the order is, you don't take multiple trips, is take everything with you. So when you get out of the car at the lake, you're gonna take your bike, and even though you might pass where you check in the wetsuits, they're not gonna let you do that. You go to the bike check-in, you put your bike in your transition spot. So again, make note of where you're coming in out of the swim leg to see where your bike's at. Then after you check your bike, then you walk over to the sanitation pools, if you will, where you're going to submerge your wetsuit or other neoprene items, and then they officially tag it so that's proof that you've done that. You have to wear that for the entire race as well. And then you take your wetsuit over and you have to leave it in transition. You hang it up. They'll give you 2 really thin hangers, so if you want something more stable so it doesn't stretch out the wetsuit or anything, bring your own, but otherwise we'll provide that. You leave it there overnight, and then at that point you can then, if you want to put anything in your transition 1 bag for the bike, you can leave that there as well, but you'll also have access to that in the morning. Side note, I did not do all those things in that order, so I ended up getting in like 11,000 steps the day before the race on a day where you're supposed to be getting off your feet. So plan ahead, know you got to do those things in that order, bring your stuff, and get back to resting before the race. That brings us to race morning. Shuttle buses are going to take you to the swim start, so get there early to get in line for that. If you do get there a little bit late with the road blockages, you may actually be able to stop at the road barricade, or even turn into like a little bus turnoff real temporarily where you could jump out and then cross the street and get in line. Bring your headlamp, it's going to be dark in transition. And when you first got off the bus, there was a ton of Porta Johns, but then actually in transition there was like 5, so the line was a million miles long, and so that's near the morning clothes bag, so that's where everyone was hanging out. So if you could use the bathroom right when you get off the bus, and then be organized enough to get your stuff done, and then be able to go back the 100 or so yards back to the swim, past the swim start and to where the buses were dropping you off to use the bathroom again, because there was absolutely no line. 20 minutes before the race, I went back there, 0 line, tons of porta potties, and there was at least 50 people in the other line getting frustrated as the race was approaching to the start. Okay, the swim. It's in a lake. Seems pretty clean, but you can't really see anything while you're swimming at all. The water's between typically 57 and 62. They announced at one point that it was like 59. Someone else said it was like 57. And it was even colder last year, but just know that it's going to be hovering around the high 50 mark. If it's below 60, you got to wear a wetsuit, and I really would recommend a thermal cap, or at least wearing 2 caps. I have a video on cold water swimming I can put in the upper corner here. And then also, this is the first time I've ever worn booties, and people say they slow you down or they don't help that much. And while that may be true a little bit, I didn't notice a significant change in my swim time at all. And my feet actually did get cold. They're not totally like, cold proof, if you will. They did get a little bit cold in the swim in the water, but where they helped me most was the 20 minutes before the race when I put them on. There was wet grass, there was wet sand, and my feet were really warm and toasty, and it felt really nice walking on the surfaces where a couple other athletes were complaining that their feet were already cold before they even gotten in the water, and mine were warm and had no problem at all. Given the cold water, you also want to make sure you've got a good pair of goggles with an anti-fog, or use some anti-fog yourself, because with that cold water and you're breathing it, you're more likely to have those goggles fog up. The start line's right along the sand, and so while the corral is waiting to move into the water, you can there's openings in it, so you could get out to the water, splash your face a little bit to get some of the use of some of that cold, or you can even go out a little bit deeper and breathe and blow bubbles into the water, so it gets rid of that initial shock, so that when you go back in the corral and then walk into the water, your body doesn't feel that shock, and so you don't have the difficulty with breathing because you've already done that just a few minutes before the race. It's very convenient. It's a nice way to set up. Okay, you finish the swim. Your T1 bags are just 20 yards from the water. You grab your bag. You go another 20, 30 feet. You sit down and you get rid of your swim stuff. Get your bike stuff on. I'd really recommend having a towel to dry yourself off just really quickly, because it's so wet and you're going to be so cold when you jump onto that bike. The bike course is extremely flat, so it's not necessarily really windy on the course, but it's wide open roads. You're going at a faster pace, so you're causing more air to come at you, which can make you colder. And so putting on something like a wind vest, or even arm warmers and gloves, keeping your extremities warm. I made a makeshift arm warmer / glove out of an old work sock. This worked beautifully. I wore it for like 40 miles before I threw it away at an aid station, so I still had the full dexterity in my hands. I got this idea from Jen at a bike shop that I work at. Thank you, Jen. It worked beautifully. So do that, or any combination thereof. And then most importantly, I think, is really your feet when you come out of that water, especially if you didn't have the thermal socks on during the swim. Ironman would really win some points if you put foot warmers or toe warmers in our registration bags, because a friend of mine, Blake, gave me toe warmers, and those were awesome. Put them in the shoes. My feet were still get cold, don't get me wrong, they weren't a miracle, but they definitely helped warm up the feet. I also put toe covers on top of my shoes prior to the race, so they were already there, and I was able to just slip my feet in and do my Velcro. So I had warmth on the inside and then extra warmth on top. Cold weather aside, make sure you're practicing a lot of riding in the aero position. The only time you're able to really get out of the aero position is when you're going around turns. And so if you're not used to riding that much straight aero, which I'm not, around mile 30-ish or so, I started to have some low back pain, and I was looking forward to having a turn, so on the turns I could stand up, or at least I could coast a little bit and stretch out my back. And so that's fine on the turns, but if you do that, well, when you could be going quite fast in the aero position, you're giving away free speed. You're wasting seconds when that's not about fitness. That's just about practicing the aero position. Now, I was cold the whole time on the bike, but I didn't do it last year, and people said it was warmer last year, so people warmed up a bit. It was overcast the entire time this year, so I was cold, but I'm also a wimp when it comes to the cold weather races. So you can kind of gauge that on how you are compared to me, and wear less or more than what I did. Finally, the run. Not much to talk about that, other than that it was more challenging than I thought, simply because it's on a golf course for the majority of it, on the golf cart paths, and so the surface isn't quite as forgiving. But more importantly, with the undulations of just up, down, and even the quick left or right turns. It wasn't like turning on a street, but they would kind of wrap around fairly quickly. It almost felt like a U-turn in a couple of spots, even though you were staying on the one path all the way around. And so there's quite a few steep ups and downs. Nothing really horrible, but you just never felt like you got into the groove like you normally would with rolling hills that can actually be quite fast. And there was a couple of spots where there was a grassy section that was flat, but more notably, there was a dirt / almost sandy section by the second lap that was fairly steep. That more is like your off-road triathlon style that I was not expecting. So, but for the vast majority of it's on concrete or blacktop. So just be prepared for that. Finally, have your Iron Sherpa bring a dry shirt. That way, right after the race, you can put on a clean shirt. I feel like you should do that for every race, but this one especially, it was still overcast. Your kit is wet from either sweat or dumping water to stay cool. And it got pretty chilly after the race, hanging around, cheering on the other athletes and having people finish and chatting with them. So also, as soon as you come across the finish line, put your name on the massage table list for free massage afterwards, speed up that recovery, get it going right away. And overall, it was a great race, great venue. To sum up, make sure you watch the cold water swimming video in the upper right, and also bring extra stuff for the bike to stay warm. You can always throw it away. And just make sure you've got everything in the car so you aren't making excessive trips, because otherwise you're going to get a lot of steps, a lot of extra driving because of the way they want you to do things in order, which is fine. You just got to be prepared for it. So overall, Indian Wells was a great race. If you're thinking about doing it, tell me your favorite part of it, or ask a specific question that you might have right now before the video's over. And until next week, I'll see you on the trails.